Lights inside the huge auditorium glowed softly as the audience settled into their seats, waiting for the next audition to begin. The judges looked tired after a long day of performances. Some singers had been good, some terrible, and a few unforgettable. But nobody in that room knew they were about to witness one of the most emotional moments in AGT history. Backstage, a young girl stood quietly near the curtain. She looked nervous as she held the microphone with both hands. Her heart was racing so fast that she could barely breathe. This was the moment she had dreamed about for years. Her name was Emily, a shy 16-year-old girl from a small town where almost nobody believed dreams could come true. Her mother squeezed her hand gently. "Just sing from your heart," she whispered. Emily nodded, but fear still filled her eyes. She had faced difficult times growing up. Her father had passed away 2 years earlier after a long illness. Music became her only escape from pain. Every night, she would sit alone in her room listening to old songs her father loved. One song always made her feel close to him again, Hotel California. That song carried memories of late-night car rides, family laughter, and happier days before life changed forever. Tonight, she wanted to sing it not only for herself but for her father. A stage assistant smiled and pointed toward the stage. "You're up next." The crowd applauded politely as Emily walked onto the massive AGT stage. The bright lights almost blinded her. Thousands of people stared at her from the audience while cameras followed every step she took. Simon Cowell looked up from the judge's desk with curiosity. "Hello. What's your name?" "My name is Emily," she answered softly. "How old are you?" "I'm 16. Simon leaned forward slightly. "And why did you decide to come to AGT?" Emily paused for a moment. Her voice trembled. "Because music saved my life." The audience instantly became silent. Simon's serious expression softened. "Well, we're listening." Emily took a deep breath and walked toward the center of the stage. The music began quietly. For a second, her hands shook with fear. Then she closed her eyes and started singing. The first words of Hotel California floated gently through the auditorium. Immediately, something changed in the room. Her voice was haunting, emotional, and incredibly pure. Every lyric sounded filled with real pain and real memories. The audience stopped moving completely. Even the judges looked stunned. Simon slowly lifted his head, his eyes fixed on the girl standing alone under the spotlight. As Emily continued singing, confidence replaced her fear. She poured every emotion into the song. It was no longer just a performance. It felt like she was telling the story of her life through music. The camera showed people in the crowd already wiping tears from their eyes. Heidi Klum whispered softly, "Oh my God." The emotional power in Emily's voice became stronger with every verse. The audience could feel her heartbreak, her hope, and the love she still carried for her father. Simon crossed his arms tightly as he listened. Usually, he remained calm during emotional performances. But this time was different. Emily reached the chorus, and her voice soared through the theater with unbelievable passion. The entire audience erupted into applause even before the song ended. Simon blinked several times, trying to hide the tears forming in his eyes. For a moment, he looked down at the table silently. The song continued, softer now, almost like a goodbye message to someone she deeply missed. Backstage, Emily's mother was crying uncontrollably while watching the monitor. As the final note echoed across the auditorium, silence filled the room for 2 long seconds. Then suddenly, the audience exploded into a massive standing ovation. People screamed, clapped, and cheered louder than they had all night. Emily stood frozen in shock as tears rolled down her face. Simon Cowell slowly stood up with the crowd. His eyes were red with emotion. He looked at Emily, shaking his head in disbelief. The applause continued for nearly a full minute. Emily covered her mouth, overwhelmed by the reaction. Finally, Simon picked up his microphone. His voice sounded different, softer than usual. "You know, after all these years, it's very rare that a performance truly touches me emotionally." The audience became quiet again. Simon continued, "But there was something incredibly special about you tonight." Emily wiped tears from her cheeks. Simon looked directly at her. You didn't just sing that song. You felt it. And every single person in this room felt it with you. The crowd applauded again. How long have you been carrying that pain inside you? Simon asked gently. Emily took a shaky breath. Since my dad passed away. The audience gasped softly. He loved this song, she continued. And tonight. I just wanted him to hear me somehow. Simon lowered his eyes for a second, clearly emotional. When he looked back up, tears were visible on his face. I think he heard you, Simon said quietly. At that moment, many people in the audience began crying openly. Even the other judges looked emotional. Sofia Vergara smiled through tears. That was beautiful. Heidi nodded. Absolutely unforgettable. Howie Mandel leaned toward Emily. This is why people love music. Because sometimes words are not enough, and songs say everything we feel. Emily could barely speak through her tears. Simon smiled warmly. You know what I loved most? You never tried to impress anyone. You were honest. And honesty like that is rare. The audience applauded loudly once more. Then Simon looked around at the crowd before turning back to Emily. I think you may have just given us one of the most emotional performances we've ever had on this stage. Emily broke down crying completely. Her mother ran onto the stage and hugged her tightly while the audience cheered again. The cameras captured Simon quietly wiping tears from his eyes. For once, the famous judge known for his tough criticism had no harsh words, no sarcastic comments, and no jokes. Only emotion. Only honesty. Only respect for a young girl who turned pain into something beautiful. That night, millions of people watching around the world would remember the moment forever, not because of perfect vocals or flashy performance tricks, but because one young girl stood on a stage and sang directly from her heart. And for a few unforgettable minutes, an entire theater felt every word she sang.